I've dreaded having to do this, and probably should have done it earlier. But this isn't easy for me to do at all. With respect to hearing the news this past weekend on the passing of my dear friend Eric Moore. I knew he had been battling illness, and he had been sick for quite some time. But I can't sit up here and tell you that I knew that this day was coming. Not like this. And I'm just to think about it and even talk about it like this. It's just hard to stomach. It's really hard to fathom. But to not say anything, that would be disrespectful to him as well, for a person who you guys have no idea what this man has done for me personally and professionally. I'm sure you probably have gotten bits and pieces from other media outlets who've celebrated his legacy and have spoken about the contributions he's made to this space and just to the industry overall. And they're all correct. But for those of you who don't know who Eric Moore is, let me tell you once again who he is and just how impactful he's been, not only to HBCU sports, the operation, but to the entire HBCU sports landscape. Eric Moore is the founder, editor, webmaster of Onnidan.com. Onnidan.com is let's just say, before there was HBCU sports, before there was the swag page, before there was TSPN sports, before there was HBCU Buzz and HBCU Digest, now the Education News Flash or whatever it is right now, and HBCU, whatever there is out there right now, there was Onnidan.com. That's the man who started it all, Eric Moore. I had the privilege, the privilege of meeting him, or actually being introduced to him, going way back to 1998, which was the year that the then HBCU sports at the time was known as the swag page. That was actually the year that we had secured the domain swagpage.com. But the website was actually created in 1997, and we were using at that time, during the early days of the internet, web server account that I had with GTE, and I had a little test page. It was the swag page, and it was just simply covering information on swag schools, and it was more so a test, not necessarily doing it for business purposes, but was just simply an experiment to become familiar with HTML, which was the high tech thing at the time, and that was the thing to know, learning HTML, and that's all this was, a project. But once I realized that maybe there is a need for this, I went on ahead and secured swagpage.com in June 22nd of 1998. And shortly thereafter, after just, kind of getting familiar with the internet and becoming familiar with all of the tools that were available, I happened to stumble across Onnidan. And I looked at his site and I'm thinking, wow, look at this, man. How does he do this? He's covering all HBCUs, and I'm here just covering the swag. And it wasn't easy, trying to get the information and trying to put it out there. But for whatever reason, I noticed he had an ad banner on his website. And at that time, again, this was, internet infancy, and not necessarily knowing where the internet was going to take us at that time. All I knew is ad banner, monetization. How did he do that? And for whatever reason, I felt the need to reach out. Now I'm thinking he doesn't know me. I guess in many instances, I would be considered somewhat of a competitor. but I'll go ahead and ask anyway. And, I made a nice little pretty email and sent it to the email address that was listed on the website asking, hey, man, how did you get that Kodak? The sponsor was Kodak, the picture company, Kodak cameras. And I said, how did you get that? How did you get Kodak to sponsor you? And he replied back. And to be quite honest with you, I don't recall what the actual response was to how Kodak became a sponsor. What I was more amazed about was the fact that he actually took the time to address my inquiry from somebody who he didn't know, had never heard of, and didn't necessarily have an obligation to reply, but he did anyway. And it was at that point to where the exchange began. He knew what I was doing. He saw what I was doing, and I saw what he was doing, and it just became a back and forth. And the one thing that he said to me early on, and I swear to you, to this very day, it was not only true, it was prophetic. I was simply amazed. I said, Eric, I really do appreciate you taking the time to address my questions. And, and I told him, I said, considering that we are competitors and we're both trying to go after the same information, even though I'm kind of in a different niche, but you've got the entire HBCU landscape. You don't owe me anything. And I appreciate you taking the time to even talk to me about these things. And his reply to me was, Ken, brother, he said, there is enough pie in the sky for everyone. And that just stuck with me because at that time it was just him and me. That was it. And and we didn't have any idea how things were going to be at this point. But even to this day, that still remains to be true. When you put in consideration all of the HBCU focus sites that are out there, there's enough pie for everyone. And he was spot on. So that was in 1998 when, we actually had the opportunity to just kind of exchange. And then we kind of eventually got to know each other at the time. I didn't get an opportunity to meet Eric until it was in the year 2000 in Indianapolis at the Circle City Classic. It was Grambling and Florida A&M. Grambling won that game, by the way. And it was me and my colleague at the time, Jeff Duplessis, college buddy. He and I are, that's my brother, and we, we still chop it up to this very day. But Jeff Duplessis made that trip with me to Indianapolis, and we ran into Eric, and we exchanged pleasantries. It was real quick, but I said, "Hey, man, pleasure to meet you." And he was actually busy. He was literally working, and I don't know if he was doing stats. But, he didn't have time to talk long, but he did take the time to address us. And that was that. And it was at that point, after we returned, the conversations began to, continue to grow. And the conversations got lengthier. We would talk on the phone. And then there was another significant moment that, again, kind of gave me some perspective on the type of person that Eric was. Now, at that time, this is around 2001, and the SWAC page was thriving. And if you guys know the history of HBCU sports and the SWAC page back in the day, let me just take the time to say that before there was Facebook, before there was Twitter, before there was IG, MySpace, and every other kind of space that was out there, the SWAC page message board, man, was social media 1.0. And when I tell you it used to be swinging, it used to be swinging. And there were a lot of great times there. But in this particular moment, and this was in 2001, during the summer of 2001, Rudy Washington was the commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference at the time. And news had broken that Rudy Washington had been fired from the SWAC. And according to the SWAC, Rudy Washington had allegedly stole something like $1.5 million from the conference, in which some way, somehow, I think they accidentally paid him his check. And, I don't know what the details were, but that was in 2001. What makes that story so interesting is that Eric sent me an email and he followed it up with a call. He said, look, man, I'm not telling you this to alarm you. He says, but I just got word, and Luke Williams, who is the editor of the Black College Sports page, who was publishing his work on Onnidan, he said, look, man, Luke just published a story. Luke just published a story about the Rudy Washington situation. And Rudy Washington has filed a lawsuit against the SWAC. And I just want you to know that your website has been mentioned in the lawsuit. And I'm thinking, what? What? And then lo and behold, I go and I read the report, and Luke is reporting how Rudy Washington and his attorneys were talking about comments that were made about him and his character on the swagpage.com message board, and how people were calling him a crook and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. He goes, look, man, I'm not telling you this to alarm you, but I just want you to know, I'm not saying you got to get a lawyer or whatever, but I just wanted to make you aware that you have been mentioned, or your website has been mentioned in the lawsuit. And needless to say, I'm freaking out. And, I did what I had to do on my end. But for him to take the time out to make me aware of that situation, again, just spoke to me about the type of person that he truly was, because he didn't have to do it. He didn't have to do it. And that's kind of where our relationship blossomed. And then from there, again, there were countless conversations about website operations, business, internet trends. He would share with me some of the things that he was doing on his website. I would share with him some of the things that I was doing on my website, and would make suggestions about maybe he should do this. And he would tell me, well, maybe you should consider this. Talking about web hosting partners and problems with the web hosting companies that we were with. And, ultimately me making the suggestion, well, you know what, man, I haven't had that problem. Maybe you should come and, consider using the web hosting company that I'm with. And he did that. And those were the exchanges that we had. And then they carried over to, how's the missus? How's the missus? How's the daughter? How are the kids? And vice versa. And we just kind of shared all of these personal stories, man, that it just got to the point to where I just called. Didn't want to talk about anything related to the internet. Didn't want to talk about anything. We just wanted to just talk. And me being the person I am, I can talk. And but I talked to the folks who I really enjoyed talking with. And Eric and I had some lengthy conversations, man. And he shared with me some nuggets that will forever stay with me. Just wow. I around 2006, 2007, I actually thought about, we were still a SWAC page at the time, and I actually thought about giving up the SWAC page. I spent a lot of time on it. Wasn't necessarily making a whole lot of money. And I had a wife and kids to feed. And, between that, and I wasn't doing it full time. I was still working my 9 to 5 at the time. And I just said, man, this is too much. I don't know if I can continue this. And it was Eric Moore who encouraged me not to give it up, because his words to me was, Ken, you can't give up, because believe it or not, what you're doing is important. And what you are doing is of value to others who rely upon you for the service and the information that you provide. This was my operation, and for whatever reason, he had more appreciation for what I did, and felt that others had more appreciation for what I was doing than I did. I couldn't appreciate that. And it was that conversation that I did not, because I was convinced it was going to happen. I told my wife, baby, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And had it not been for that conversation, I'm telling you, folks, had it not been for that conversation, HBCU sports as we know of right now would not exist. It would not. And it wasn't too long after that conversation that I made the decision to change the website name from the SWAC page to TSPN Sports. And that was done with the intent to, try to cover all HBCUs as opposed to just covering the SWAC schools that, that we were doing at the time. And I wouldn't have made that move had it not been for him telling me not to give up and to continue to move forward. And needless to say, it was probably the best advice I'd ever received. And the thing is as valuable as that information was, given everything that he had said to me previously about, being mentioned in the lawsuit and things that I shouldn't necessarily worry myself about, I kind of had these frustration moments that I would share with him, and he'd be like, "Man, don't waste your time with that. You don't." Now I was the younger person at the time, so obviously he's a little bit more mature than I am, and he in a brotherly fashion would pass on that knowledge to me, and I'm telling you, man, I took it all in. And despite that information and that advice that he had given me, that wasn't even the biggest impact that he had. And I'm going to tell you, some of you guys may know this, and we put it out there publicly, but the biggest impact / contribution that Eric has made for this operation was the current name that we have right now in HBCU sports. When I had, when we were TSPN Sports, that was a spin. TSPN was considered, the SWAC page network. That was the website at the time. We went from the SWAC page, and because we were literally a network of individuals, fans, and supporters, and so forth, we tried to, kind of expanded the SWAC page network and TSPN Sports. But I'm thinking that makes no sense with respect to us providing coverage in the, for the entire HBCU landscape. We got to come up with a better name. And I went on the internet and I literally started looking up domain names. And I typed in HBCU Sports. I'm thinking, who's got this? And lo and behold, Eric Moore owns HBCU Sports. And I'm thinking, he doesn't use it. And you type it in, I'm thinking, I pick up the phone. I said, "Eric, hey man, I see you own the domain HBCUsports.com. He said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "How come you haven't used it?" He said, "Well, I figured if I might need it, if I need it, I'll use it. But, I said, "Hey man, can I have it?" He said, "No, but I'll sell it to you." And we negotiated the price, and it was a heavy price, brother. And it took some years to pay off that domain name. Believe me when I tell you. So the name HBCU Sports right now, our current name and the domain, ties in to the contribution that Eric Moore had. Now, granted, he didn't, like I said, he didn't give it to me, but that just goes to show the impact that he has had on this operation. And we joked all the time about how we are competitors in this space, but yet that didn't stop us from passing on advice or making suggestions, or how he would contact me and say, "Hey man, you are, pretty good with WordPress. What can you tell me?" Because he was doing projects for other clients, asking me if I could provide him with some assistance to help him with a particular problem or whatever the case may be. And I was glad to do it. After all he had done for me, it was the least that I could do. So I had to take the time to share this, to give you guys just some idea as to, again, the impact that he's had in the space, but most importantly, me and this operation. And Eric, I yeah, he actually came here, and I believe that was 2016. He was the executive director for the Black College Sports Information Directors Association, and he came here for a conference, and we actually had the opportunity to meet up. And I think he told me it was literally his first trip to Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. And so when he had some free time between sessions, he said, "Hey," I said, "Look, man, let me pick you up." And I literally, we drove all around town. I took him to every corner of Dallas, including taking him down to Paul Quinn College, an HBCU here in Dallas, and took him on the campus. And he thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we concluded that tour of Dallas with a trip to Papados. And just literally just had a just great conversation. Dinner there, and then of course we had dinner one time. It was me, him, Luke Williams, and even Stephen Gaither. We actually had dinner one time in Atlanta at a restaurant, and that was the year of the first Celebration Bowl. And again, just having an opportunity, man, to listen to him talk, listen to Luke talk, and to just take that all in. For me to tell you guys just how impactful this man is, and I keep saying that, using the word impactful, but there is no other word to use. I'm going to miss Eric, man. I am. It was, I probably should have done this earlier, but I had to just have to think about it for a moment, because this really hurts me. And I didn't want to, get on here and get all emotional and so forth. But this is not easy. Mrs. Moore, Nikki, you guys are in my thoughts and prayers. Eric Moore is, has literally made this space and this industry all the more better because of what he's done. And I will never forget it. And I won't allow others to forget him. So thank you. And thank you all for taking a few minutes to let me talk about my dear friend Eric.